Hey everybody, it's Rajesh here.
Intane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life. Welcome everybody. Welcome to another episode of Baskets of Knowledge. And unfortunately today I don't have my amazing co-host Tane with us because he's away at Mahi doing a bit of work. So it's just me and our guest, who we'll introduce in a second. But as always, we like to share a bit of learnings that we've had over the last time we had a podcast. So the learning I want to share today is I posted on my LinkedIn today. It's about the Misogi method or the Misogi method. And this is something that was introduced to me about a year ago, and I've always taught it. The Misogi method is basically we should all try and do something in our lives that's challenging every year. Something that's challenging physically or mentally, or something that's challenging, and it's challenging enough that there's a 50% chance of success. So you're not going to choose something that is easy. There's 50% chance of success. So there's only two rules. It's got to be really hard. It's also got to be something that you're not going to die. Those are two rules essentially. And it got me thinking about that thing. And earlier this year I did my Misogi, I think, for the year. And I think we should all try and do something that just challenges us. We live life in a very comfortable zone. We live life in our comfort zones, and we get pushed out of comfort zone and we quickly come back. But sometimes it's good to something that just scares you. You just think, oh, this is really quite scary, and you learn a lot about yourself. It's not about achieving the end goal; it's about what you do to that. So my learning for this week is the Misogi method. And if you want to learn more about it, check out my LinkedIn. I'll put a post on the gram as well about that there. But hey, that's my musings. It's not about me today. As always, to our regular listeners, we know we like to have people from around the country and across the world to speak about their stories. Everyone is amazing. Everyone has a fantastic story to tell. And today we are very lucky and very privileged to have someone that I have been following for the last few months on their socials. And they produce some amazing content, but also some content that gets me thinking about the world, gets me thinking about, our identity, and gets me thinking about my own identity as an Indian person that lives in a country that is super diverse, but also from a cultural background that's so different. Which is why I reached out to our guest today, and we're really grateful that they have said yes to jump on. They've had a pretty crazy exam season, so it's awesome to have you on. Welcome to our podcast. Welcome to Boston Knowledge. Kia ora, namaste, and salam alaikum, Irfaan.
Walaikum salam and namaste, and thank you very much for having me on the show. It's a huge privilege to be on the show, so thank you very much for the invite.
No worries, beautiful. Irfaan, for people who don't know anything about you, do you want to tell them a bit about who you are and what are you doing at this point in time?
So hi everyone, I'm Irfan, and I am a co-president of the Otago International Students Association. I'm also the public relations officer at the New Zealand International Students Association. So a bit more about that. I mean, you can see that I'm an international student advocate. I care a lot about international students because I myself have had the privilege of, as you mentioned in your introduction, integrating into a society as an Indian person in New Zealand. It's a huge privilege. I want to give people that opportunity as well. A bit about my studies. I'm doing a Bachelor of Biomedical Sciences, majoring in infection and immunity. Basically, after COVID-19, I realized that the work of our virologists, our immunologists, those who work in infectious diseases behind the scenes, they do a lot of work in ensuring that we can actually not just overcome a pandemic, but then be prepared for the next pandemic that's coming. And we always hear of this disease X that's going to be coming in 20 or 30 years. So these people do some very good work in that. And I was very happy to, I decided I wanted to go into this because I want to see how actually people can do that. And actually have the opportunity to work from behind the scenes rather than just be in the front line, because it takes a lot to be in the front line as well. My mom, speaking of the work that I do, is also because I've been motivated by my mother. She was a former nurse. As I say the word former, because she left a job when I was born. My dad works in civil service. And so I've got a very good mix of background. So, basically the health sciences, public health part of me is really on my mom's side, and my dad's really a thinker, so it gets me to think about a lot of things, which obviously motivates me to go into international student advocacy.
Oh, beautiful. What a great summary of where you are at this point in time. And what I like about that, Irfan, is how you spoke about what you're studying has been motivated by strongly by your mum, by the health, but also by yourself, by looking at the world. A lot of people want to become a doctor or a dentist, those vocations that you see out there. Um, but if we don't have our immunologists or virologists, they can't actually do their jobs. So it's really awesome to see that, COVID brought out a lot of the both the good and the bad, but also it brought us some real highlights for people that do some things behind the scenes which we didn't weren't aware of. They've been around for a very long time, but nobody knew they existed. But now all of a sudden they're out in the limelight talking about how the virus works and how it replicates, and everyone becomes interested in that there because it's now, hey, wait a minute, this is actually really interesting science out there. So it's really beautiful to hear that there. And I guess let's talk about your origin story because we all love an origin story. So you're sitting today in Dunedin, where it's a bit cold, but obviously this is not like you said. You're an international student. Where is home? Where do you classify as home for you? Because as you said, I read somewhere that you have a as a. I'll let you tell the story actually. You tell the story about your integrated family.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty interesting on where I actually call home because I have grown up in Singapore for my whole life. My whole life for the past 20 years, I've been in Singapore. But actually, many people don't know this. People have started to know this as they interact with me. But I have an Indian father and a Pakistani mother. So my mom's family actually came from Jalandhar in pre-independence British India, and they moved to Pakistan, Rawalpindi. So my mom became Pakistani because she was eventually born in Singapore, but her parents
Yep.
went there after partition. I can see the hand. My dad, his family came from Pondicherry and they came out of there. They didn't cross, they came out and they went to Singapore. But my parents were both born in Singapore. So I'm born in Singapore. So essentially, home is in Singapore.
Yep.
But I'm very rooted. I like to say that I'm very rooted to my heritage. So regardless of the fact that I'm born in Singapore, I'm very rooted to my Pakistani slash Indian heritage. My father does not have any more family members that we know that are in India,
Oh
but
wow.
we did actually visit Pakistan in 2017. I had the opportunity to go and see where my grandfather came from, the village, the place he came from. It's really the same. I mean, obviously the redevelopments there are a little bit off compared to where we are in Singapore and of course here in New Zealand. So this might also come as a bit of a surprise because I do get into trouble at times when I tell people that I'm not really so into this Singapore culture of things, but I was essentially very much raised in a background, in a family where we were very close knit. So I had the upbringing not just from my mom or my dad, but also the frequent Indian slash Pakistani style debates that I used to have with my uncles and my aunts. They love politics. And so most of the family weekends that we gathered to meet my grandmother was spent basically debating about who's on whose side and all that. So I was raised essentially in a very sort of close knit family where we cared a lot about family, and family is really everything to us. And so it was a bit difficult when I wanted to come to New Zealand. And obviously, we had to find a way to meet and speak. Obviously, after my grandmother passed away, I have not been in very close communication with my uncles. They have moved on and they are very busy as well. But it might surprise you and most international students, but I actually speak to my parents on a daily basis. And now with the semester break, I actually call them twice a day because I wake up and then it's maybe a few hours in at about lunch hour after my lunch. It's morning in Singapore before my dad goes to work. So we actually speak. And then after he comes back from work, we actually speak as well. Because that family connection is very important to me.
That's really beautiful. Why is it beautiful? It's beautiful because a lot of I'm gonna reference back to culture. I think culture is really important in this whole conversation because you spoke about coming from where home. Where I'm gonna use the word inverted commas of home, and from what you say, home is where your family is, and it sounds like you've been raised in a family where it doesn't matter where you go in the world, your family is going to be your home for you. Like you said, right now you speak to them all the time, so that brings home to you every day on whether it's on on the WhatsApp call or what it is, which is really really important. And I guess what I loved about that story was that even though you don't have any paternal links anymore to India through your dad's side that you know of, you still find that that's your home. And I guess this is similar, but not similar to me, where I've grown up, I'm born and raised in Africa. My mom is from India. My dad is fifth generation Indian in Africa. So where is home? My home is Zimbabwe. My roots are in India, and now I live in New Zealand. But I've been here for a long time, so it's really quite a crazy. And I guess you'll get to the juxtaposition at some point in your life where you go, right, cool, where am I? That's beauty. That's the beauty of the world. And I guess, given that you've said that you're so close to your family, and Singapore has some fantastic education providers, and Southeast Asia is really great. Why would you leave this amazingly family close to community to come to a place at the bottom of the world where it's cold? And what is the you know why?
So yeah, what is the why basically? Yeah, thanks for the question. I actually intended to go into university in Singapore. And of course, being in Singapore, having lived there for very long, I wanted to go into the university. I had actually done my national service before I came here. And during the course of my national service, I've had the huge privilege of interacting with a lot of senior officers in the Singapore Civil Defense Force who themselves went overseas and worked and then came back and obviously contributed because they were scholars. I was not a scholar in Singapore, and I was also discussing with them on whether I should probably come back to Singapore and contribute to Singapore. But most of them who went overseas mentioned about how you're going overseas, it could be a chance for you to find a second home. And at the same time, during the time I actually was in national service, there was a lot of rhetoric coming from the United Kingdom that we've got our first British Indian finance minister, Chancellor of the Exchequer. He was Chancellor at the time, Rishi Sunak. So I was really into that and wanted to know more about what he was doing and all. And then obviously Partygate happened and all that. And he went on to be the first British Indian Prime Minister. So I realized the opportunities that are provided by British Commonwealth countries like Australia, New Zealand, United Kingdom is more than that in Singapore. Not to say there's not much opportunities in Singapore, but I have tended to found that a lot of opportunities are provided to government scholars rather than just by meritocracy and that you can climb regardless of what you are. So it's a very institutionalized system over there. And my father, being a civil servant himself, who worked in the police and then went to the Ministry of Education, seconded this fact and being like, it's not going to be a country where you can realize your full potential. So obviously the decision was whether to go to the UK or to come to New Zealand. My uncle goes back and forth to the UK, and he was saying the situation there was very saturated. The UK was a very saturated country. There was a lot of problems. It was not the right time to go. And so I went to do my research. New Zealand was closer to home. I am the only child, and so distance matters a lot to my parents. And so I decided I would come to New Zealand, and University of Otago is one of the best universities in this part of the world, because I've got friends who came here in previous years, and so they were also able to make my decision an easy one. That's why I decided to come to New Zealand. And I don't say this that New Zealand does not have much opportunities as compared to Singapore, but I feel this that opportunities is something that you want to create for yourself. So if you go to a country that has a lot of opportunities, like the United States or the United Kingdom, but you are focused only on benefits and not bothered about things, waiting for everyone to give you something, waiting to be spoon fed, and you're not going to get opportunities even in the best of the world, best of the country. The United States, people say it's a country of opportunities, but if you're not going to go out there, you're not going to get the opportunities. Of course, much remains to be said that when I came to New Zealand, I was very privileged to be surrounded by a community that was willing to give me the opportunity, which motivated me to do what I am doing in addition to my university studies.
Yeah, and that's a great reflection, and I want to acknowledge the fact that you emphasized, family was an important part of this making decision because distance, listening to your uncle's stories as well helped you form your decision to come down south and study in New Zealand. And I love what you said that you can go to anywhere in the world and there's opportunities, but if you choose not to take those opportunities, you might as well not go there. I always say this is my quote: zero time anything times zero is zero. So you could
Yeah.
have a million opportunities, but if you do zero effort, your answer is going to be zero all the time, right? So you just have to add that one times whatever is where things are changing. And obviously, as we go through the conversation, we'll talk about how your one has gone to two and three and four and those different opportunities. But I want to segue just a little bit because for a lot of our listeners, there are some people who don't actually realize that in Singapore, national service is compulsory. What is that like for you? Because it's just part of your life. You just do it. You know you have to do it. And what is that like for you as you finish up your high school and you go, right, cool, I'm going to go do my national service. Um, what are some of the highlights, I guess, and I guess some of the lowlights as you go through that experience, if you can remember some? Or do you want to explain what national service is actually? If we could break it right down to base values.
Yeah, so basically we all when we were growing up as a male in Singapore, we knew that we had to do 2 years of national service. And obviously, if you're studying overseas, they'll not let you leave the country until you actually agree and actually go in and do 2 years. So I was really ready for national service because when I was in secondary school and college, my parents actually put me through what is called National Police Cadet Corps, which is a uniformed group, and it was centered around the police. I chose to go into the police because my dad was a police officer, so it's really a matter of natural progression for me. And at a point of time, I went through adventure training camps, survival training camps, overseas journeys to Thailand to help with the orphanages. So these are things that I have been trained when I was very, very young, when I was in secondary school and when I was in junior college. So when I went to national service, it wasn't really a bit of a culture shock in that sense. Although I would say there was a bit of a surprise because I've always expected, like any other Singaporean person, you'd expect to be posted to the Singapore Armed Forces, the SAF, which is the army. But I was part of the 20% or 30% of people that was posted to the Singapore Civil Defense Force, so which is a firefighting and rescue organization. So that was a bit of a surprise for me because I'm like, okay, different organization, but I welcome the opportunity. I was very happy to go in anyways. My dad was like, doesn't really matter where you go as long as you do your 2 years and you're done. And anyways, it gives you wages, so you can start saving up. So I looked at it in that way. National service was fun. You lived with a group of people. It's communal living. They've improved the system, so it's not really that bad, shambolic place that many people would think of. It's actually a good complex where we did our basic rescue training. I was in the basic rescue training for a few months, for 3 months. And then after that, went on to do an officer cadet course where I actually got injured. I fractured. It wasn't a fracture, it was a stress fracture to my tibia. So after that, I was put on admin duties. But I would say the low part was actually being injured.
Yeah.
But actually, that gave an opportunity to go to the higher part because when I was redesignated into admin, they actually put me in the deputy commissioner's office in the
Oh, wow.
headquarters. So I was working under a person who was who was the deputy commissioner and who was working in plans and policy. So it gave me an opportunity to know how a system works, how a policy making system works. And obviously, he was very clear with me, you are here, you have done this. It gives you an opportunity to understand how this system works, and you can always come back and go through a training and be an officer and contribute. And I feel that part of national service, being involved in planned policies, attending meetings, just accompanying for meetings, you get to see how people run an organization, how people run a system. Yes, it's very bureaucratic because it's the civil service, but I get to take the positive part of it and apply to my advocacy, which I'm doing today in leading OISA. For example, opportunity. You don't just have one person making all the calls in the organization. There's a group that sits down that actually have consensus, finding consensus, and of course transition. Because national service also taught me one thing about transition, because it's only 2 years of your life. Any organization cannot rely on a person just on 2 years. So every 2 years, especially if you're in admin, there will always be transition. You will have to train the person who's coming in into your job,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
then train the person for a few months. You'll understudy you for a couple of weeks and months, and then make sure he's ready to do the job. And then you reach your operationally ready date. They say ORD, so you leave the organization. But when you leave, you must make sure many will just leave for the sake of leaving because I'm done, But I felt, I mean, coming from a father who's basically in that background himself as a police officer in a civil service, I felt it was important to impart relevant skills and knowledge and actually take pride in what we do so the system continues running, whether you're there or whether you're not there.
That's I think that's a beautiful testament to your upbringing, but also to, your own character that ORD, what a great acronym, operational ready date. What a beautiful acronym. I'm going to use that in my sessions. And thank you for sharing that there because a lot of people don't know what national service is and they just think national service is all, like you said, shambolic and doom and gloom. But a lot of my friends that have gone through national service in Singapore have shared the most amazing stories that they've had. So wow, that's a pretty cool thing that they do in Singapore. I guess I say cool from someone that's outside, but everything's got pros and cons. But like you said, you take opportunities. Um, you arrive in Dunedin and you've mentioned advocacy a number of times. When did you realize that advocacy was something that I think back when I first came as an international student, I just landed and that was it. There was nothing around. It was very, very different world when I landed. So I'm thinking about you as an international student. And I think what a lot of people don't understand is international students have this perception that they have a lot of money, but I know they don't. Internationals don't have a lot of money. There's just this perception, oh, because you're international, you're rich, but that's not the way the world works. And you still have to think about all those different, there's all students go through challenges. All they'll have the same challenges, and then you add a layer when you come from a different demographic. If you're Maori, Pacific, or rural, you add a layer, and then you add another layer if you're international as well because you're not at home. And there's this financial thing that you think about at the back of your mind, even though it's not in front, it's at the back of your mind. When did you realize that, okay, hey, I want to stand up and be the face of an organization or be a change? Some of the things you got involved with was the Otago Pakistan Association. Those are things that you don't just wake up in the morning and go, this is what I want to do. What is the motivation behind that?
So this all started when I first came because it will surprise you and many of your listeners and also my friends when I told them. But I came to New Zealand 2 days after I completed my national service.
Oh,
So it
wow.
was a very short time. I completed on the 14th, and on the 16th, I was on the flight out to New Zealand. And I came alone because
Yes.
my parents were busy, and obviously the timing, it was really a
Yep.
rush and all. And I came to New Zealand. I mean, obviously, as an international student in Otago, the first thing that you do when you come and you stay in a residential college, you go for the International Student Expo welcome. So I saw this OISA, which is Otago International Students Association. That organization was there doing some very good work to get international students to come in. And then obviously for Clubs Day, I had the opportunity of going around. So I saw Otago Malaysian Students Association. I wanted a change from Singapore. 20 years in Singapore, I was tired of it. So I said, okay, will you take someone who's from who might not be from Malaysia, and speaking of that, my grandmother actually lived in Malaysia for most of her life before she moved down with my grandfather. So I said, yeah, and they were like, welcome, come and join us. So I joined. And so I got to see how different international student communities work. So OISA is more on the international students front. It was an organization that unites international students. So it is a place of sort of refuge for international students, but also OMSA is that organization that provides that cultural link to Malaysia. And like you mentioned, you might not be in that country, you might not be a citizen of that country, but you will always be you can share a link with that country. I mean, I share a very close link with Malaysia, even though I'm not a Malaysian myself. And those were the main motivations. So I was like, if these people can do that and give opportunities, create opportunities for students who want to who want to follow on through, why not I do something in the same way? So that was what motivated me in the first place to go into advocacy. And I view myself not really as someone who is a leader, but I wanted to lead by example because I knew that as going back to transition, you can never have an organization run by the same person for 20 years. There will always come a time when someone would want to move on and someone would want to discover something new. So I told myself, let me immerse myself for a few months here. And once I like the organization, I've decided on what I wanted to do, then I would participate it. I was approached because I was keen to join the Pakistan Association of Otago. You have mentioned that. So I was approached by the board chairman at that time. I emailed them, and the board chairman actually contacted me, Dr. Junaid Qureshi, a very nice guy that I still meet with till today. He's a mentor for me. And he was the one who welcomed me to the organization. He gave me the opportunity of being a general secretary, even though I was a very young age. I was leading the student and youth wing. One thing that I did not manage to achieve was actually forming the Pakistan Students Association. We didn't get the numbers. We tried to do that, but we didn't. But never mind that now. Um, and so I also discovered because Pakistan Association of Otago was the first organization I actually joined on a leadership level. And I realized that mentorship is very important. Mentorship is important because if you don't have the right mentor, you don't have the right person with that personal touch, you're not going to be a good leader. You're not going to be able to do what you want to do. And Dr. Junaid guided me through that process whilst giving me opportunities. So when I wanted to run for OISA presidency and NZISA presidency, public relations leadership, he actually supported me. He was like, yeah, I mean, you have shown your time in Pakistan Association of Otago. You've done well. I will always be here to support you. And you can do what you actually feel that's right. So he sort of let me be the eagle to fly. And so I told myself, if he can give me this opportunity, I want to give this opportunity to other people to be able to do the same. How do I do that? By being that mentor. And that's why I chose to go into advocacy in the first place, because I felt that was a way for me to be that sort of mentor to international students because I came here alone. This was a new country for me. I never came to New Zealand before, so I came alone. I had the opportunity of being surrounded by people who supported me, friends who are New Zealanders who actually, were there to share with me more about their culture when we were living in residential colleges, see how they live, but at the same time being rooted to my own culture. And I realized that if I can go through this, if I'm given the opportunity to do this, it's not right for me to just keep it and forget about it because there will be tons of international students coming in every year. They're going to be having problems. We need to be the people that help them through the problems. Some of the problems might not be problems that I face. For example, I don't live in a residential. I don't flat. I haven't gone flatting yet. And I'm living in the residential college now. So, but still, I can try to source for support as a leader myself, having built the connections with people who have the means to do it, being that sort of community connector, which is also another reason why I chose to go into advocacy in the first place.
What's so nice about that there is, you mentioned that it's not about knowing everything. We can't know everything. It's impossible if we try to know everything. But if we know, it doesn't work, right? But like you said before, you haven't gone flooding before, but that doesn't mean that you're not a face. I think what international students, actually most students require is a trusting face to be able to go, hey, I've seen Irfan there, he knows what he's talking about, let me go and speak to him. And I think that's what the role of a mentor or a coach or someone that you can confide in and go, hey, I don't know what to do, but they've seen you. And it takes a lot to put yourself out there. So you go, right, cool, I don't have this here, or this didn't work for me. I need to do this for somebody else. Or I had this here. So you had Dr. Junaid, who was fantastic for you and still is fantastic for you. And you can just pay it forward because it costs you no money. It costs you just your time. But the payoff is so massive. The impact that it has is really, really, really crazy massive. And I guess this segues onto the ripple effect that you have is in your community work with the Otago with the radio. How did you get into that there? Because that's another part of your life which we haven't spoken about. So advocacy is big, but also, you spoke right at the start that politics is really something that you are passionate about. It's something that's been brought about from when you were in Singapore having those beautiful arguments and discussions. Yeah, so let's talk about your foray into the world of radio in Otago. And again, I'm going to premise this with saying, hey, you're an international student who now wants to go onto a radio station in Dunedin. What is that like having that conversation, first of all, because you're an unknown essentially, and you're saying, hey, put me on the radio.
Yeah, so actually, I actually got to know Arina Eisel, who's also a community connector herself. She was the president of OISA. She was also an international student representative, and she was very into international students herself. So I remembered she interviewing me about when I first came and about my work in Pakistan Association of Otago at that time, and then this year in NZISA. So when she interviewed me that time, I would say she, again, back to the opportunity idea, she actually provided the opportunity, like, you actually like this. Why not, you come on the radio show? I was apprehensive at first because I was like, this is a bit difficult. I'm doing a course. It might take time. She said, yeah, I mean, it's really you. And I remember she was saying that we're here to support you. Uh, the show is going to be run on what you really like. We'll give you the guidance, but we will not tell you how to run your organization or run the system. And I really liked that because in national service, back to national service, I just liked it because it was always a top down. It was, I mean, in my role as in particular as national serviceman, as a personal assistant, it was like, I'm telling you what to do, you get it done. But when I went to the radio show, it was an opportunity for me to express whatever I wanted with reason, because freedom of speech is a little bit dangerous if taken out of proportion. So I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. I talked to my parents. I was, doing some soul searching. What do I do with this show? What should I talk about? And then I realized that I liked politics. And I realized that because it was an election year. Firstly, it was an election year, and I was like, okay, what better way to engage people in the election year? And I said, this is a youth show because it's political pulse on youth zone. So I said, okay, it's the youths, and half of the people in my residential college, in Hayward College, like I was talking to them, and now we're not interested in voting. We don't understand what it is all about. And I'm like, no, you guys have to vote. They're like, no, then prove it to us. Tell us why we should vote. And that was when I decided, okay, I'm going to run a political radio show and I'm going to try to be fair in that radio show. I have my own political beliefs, but I'm not going to let my political beliefs judge me, judge the way I run the show. I will talk to everyone. And that's why, if you'd appreciate, I actually emailed when I started, and I continue to today. I just email as many politicians based in Dunedin or even outside Dunedin, because even if they were outside Dunedin, Arena was very supportive. She said, never mind, we will help you. You can arrange videos, Zooms, you can arrange phone calls, whatever means, we will get it done. And I decided that is the best way for me to broaden not just the people's horizon and encourage our youths to vote and be involved in democratic exercises and referendum, but also expand my political beliefs, my political values. The country I come from, it's only one political party having an absolute majority in parliament. Everyone goes with that political party because they've been there for 60 years, and we cannot imagine a country where the party is not there. So every time there's an election, everyone's just going to vote for that particular party because our parents lived in their eras. They're doing a very good job for our country. We're doing very well. It's one of the good economies. So we're going to be relaxed about it. But I didn't want that. I wanted to challenge the narrative. I knew politics in New Zealand was very volatile, and so is advocacy. And I said, this is really fun because people have lived in national government, people have lived in a Labour government, people have lived in coalition. I want to understand how people feel. How do these political parties think? And that's why I started my radio show with interviewing the Honorable Ingrid Leary, who's the Member of Parliament for Taieri and someone I work very closely with in terms of advocacy, a very supportive person, both when she was in government and now obviously in opposition. And I started interviewing her, and then she gave the opportunity. She was like, you can interview Rachel Brooking. And Rachel also came on the show to talk about environment. Obviously, I did some research. So if they were I look at their own party beliefs. So Ingrid cares a lot about mental health. And so we talked a lot about mental health, but also other policies.
Yeah.
Rachel Brooking cared about environment, sustainability. She was Minister for the Environment at that time. So we talked about her role in that. And also, I had the opportunity of interviewing Michael Woodhouse from the National Party. And it was ironic because while it was the opinions that said the National would come in, and they eventually did, Michael Woodhouse was on the way out of Parliament. He was leaving Parliament because he wasn't on the list, and he was quite convinced that Dunedin was a Labour hold. And we had a chance to talk about his time in politics. He was Minister for Immigration, which actually meant something for international students. So it was something. When he shared about that, he also shared about the fact that he was going into healthcare, cared a lot about running a hospital. He's now CEO at Forte Hospital. And so we had a chat about life inside and outside of politics, and also political pulse. As I went on in the radio show and became comfortable, I decided I'm going to start going to be less comfortable about things. So I started going to the councillor level. I'm not aware of councillors levels because in Singapore you don't have local councillors. So I had the opportunity of interviewing Christine Gary, whose political beliefs were different, sort of different from mine, but worked very closely with. And I asked her about what she think about the current government. So what you have to work with the national government on national level, but you are on the local council level. There's going to be problems you guys are going to face. So I wanted to understand how that worked. I interviewed Steve Walker. He also had a very illustrious career, flew around the world. He shared that he married his wife in Pakistan, born in Singapore, so similar lifestyle. And we had a very nice chat about what he thinks. And he also we asked the difficult questions on political powers. And then very recently, I think last week or so, I had the opportunity of interviewing Kitty Allen, who's
Yes.
the former Minister of Justice. And, it was a very challenging time for her. I wanted to understand how things happened. And I wanted to make it a sort of an example, because if that happens to someone who has a very illustrious political career, it happened to anyone. Obviously, most mental health people who have mental health problems, most of them would remain silent. But I actually admire the fact that Kitty was willing to speak up about it. And that's why I said, if you will be happy to come on the show virtually, we can have a chat about it. I had a chat about it with her. So it's about talking to different parties, different organizations, getting your point of view across. And I came to realize that regardless of the fact that I have a single political affiliation, you can agree with actually almost all the political parties on some of the values and some of the things. And then it also brought to the fact that I realized how important MMP is, because MMP, our political system, pushes people it tends to a hung parliament approach, and it allows people to find consensus where there is not. And I remember Margaret Thatcher, she was saying when she first became prime minister, she said a prayer, she said, where there is trouble, may we find discourse. Pretty ironic that the UK doesn't find a solution in the trouble that they have. But New Zealand has been able to do that, and I was very impressed with it.
No, thank you for sharing that. I mean, obviously, some amazing names that you've dropped there. But what I took away from there was the fact that you had the opportunity, back to opportunity. You took the opportunity, which, someone that is an international student in a place where you know nothing about the politics, and a conversation in your hall where like we're from New Zealand, we don't really care about voting. You're like, what was this pretty crazy? It was like a great fire for you to get the show going in. And just to talk about politics on a level that is not high level, not too intense, but hey, let's break it right down. But also what's important, and I think what's important for anyone listening is it doesn't matter what party you are or what affiliation you are. At the end of the day, you're talking to a human being. All the people you spoke about, they have all their titles, they work, they're Labour, National, Acts, Greens, but in front of you, they are just a human being that is representing some part of their life is part of their political party, but the other part is them as a person. Like you spoke about mental health and well-being is something that they're going through. It's not about the party. It's not about what color they are. It's just about, hey, this is what I'm going through, which is really beautiful that you've done that. And I think for you, I just want to acknowledge the fact that you've done that there. And at the start, you said you were worried about it interfering with your study. How have you found navigating study, advocacy, NZIS, and then also the show? I mean, because it's for an outsider, it seems very busy, but for someone that is, there's a quote: if you want something done, give it to a busy person. I think you're that kind of person. Give it to you, and it'll get done. Yep. So how do you find
I think it
balancing all
boils
that?
down to the word passion.
Yes.
Yeah, I think when it comes to that, it really is about passion. So I come to think that whenever you want to do something, you need to have the passion to do it. If you don't have the passion to do it, you're gonna find it a bit of a problem. I don't say that it is not a busy thing. It's actually pretty busy, having to go through. And I'm doing it is not an arts or a commerce degree. It is a science-based degree where there's a lot of labs and work that you need to do on the side, on your university education as a priority. But I find this advocacy as a form of a hobby, because it is a means of allowing me to do what I want to do in the future. I want to go out there and contribute and help society. And advocacy is allowing me to help the people that I live among with. And for international students, advocacy is very important, as we will appreciate on that. Passion, because these are things that I really like. So obviously I don't feel tired about doing it, because I like doing what I do. And I do it not because of fame or anything, but it is more to push me beyond the boundaries and do what I really like, and understand that even though you like doing something like that, it's not smooth sailing at all. There are challenges that I have faced, but I've always linked it back to my why when I decide and do soul searching to say, should I continue doing it or should I not? I've always linked it back to my why. And that is the reason why I'm able to handle the challenges. So for people who actually think of it from the outside, it might seem to be a bit of a challenge, and it might be, oh, there's a lot of things, you're very busy and all. I also had that thinking about politicians last time when I was in Singapore. They're very busy. But then I realized that it's all about the why. They have a passion for it. They really like it. So when you like it, the time moves very quickly. You don't feel the drain, the drag. But in actual fact, I should probably caution that when I came back to Singapore at the end of last year, after one entire year, you start to feel the drain. Because when you go back to Singapore and you spend time with family, you will stay at home, you will not be doing advocacy. You will suddenly realize that your time is very empty and you're very free about it. And that actually gave me a thing. I'm still doing some research about it and reflecting about it, because life cannot be all about the work that you're doing. You need to have to find some time for yourself, some time out for yourself. And obviously, I'm still learning about that, but that is one thing that I have acknowledged about. And when I came back to New Zealand this year, energized, I realized that, I actually really like what I do. And that's the most important thing. If you have a passion to do it, then there are no limits to what you can achieve.
And that's true. But I think and I think what's important for you is passion is great, but when you link your passion to your why, it becomes even greater. Everyone's got a passion, but they don't know what their why is. I like this, yeah, okay, cool, but what's your why? And the reason I say that is because your passion is only going to get you it's so far. And as you said before, there's going to be some challenges. And unless just your why is rock solid, that passion is going to disappear. It becomes from a passion to become a pain point as opposed to a passion point. So I think it's important for you to go back to your why, which is really, really beautiful. And talking about your passions, I just want to think about this has been a fantastic conversation. So thank you so much. At the moment with your work with NZISA, what are some of the big topical issues that you're facing? And I ask this because, since COVID, the world has changed dramatically as people think about education overseas. And, New Zealand is one of many options for people out there. That's the way, that's a free market, right? What are some of the big issues that you're facing? I know, anecdotally, when I think about international students that want to come to New Zealand, which is great, one of the biggest barriers for them is getting a visa, which is, they get admission to university and all that fun stuff happens. But then getting that visa is the one that you go, oh, it takes 6 months or 8 months, or you get a no. This happened. I had to wait a lot of times. I know one of my family members got declined the visa the first time, then they got accepted the next time. And in all this time, you're like, all right, cool, what do I do? So that's obviously just something that I just thought about, but there might be other things that are top of your mind as you are raising in your role.
Yeah, I mean, I find that NZISA, it combines very effectively with my role as OISA co-president. But for OISA co-president, it's all really about the people that you serve and the community you work with. It's more on a micro level. NZISA, you are more involved with lobbying. You are more involved about championing the actual issues. So, like, I'm very happy that you mentioned about visa, because I was just talking to the RNZ guy. A few months ago, there was a guy from RNZ. He was talking about visas coming in from India, and 43% of visas coming in from the Indian subcontinents have been rejected, and they don't give reasons for it. So one of the things that NZISA is engaged in is to try to understand on the government level by working with our partners like ISANA, and also Asian Family Services, government organizations like Education New Zealand, ENZ, NZQA. These are organizations that we work very closely with because they're affiliated to or close to the government, and they can sort of shed some light into what we actually want to achieve for our students and find a way to simplify. Aside from the visa, obviously for visas, we only know stories from people who are here in New Zealand, and of course, articles that say people were basically not allowed to get a visa to come here. Most of the people that I've interacted with have a visa. They didn't find a problem with it, so I'd be honest about that. But we are obviously cognizant of the fact that there are challenges that students have in the visas. This has become worse because in recent months, the changes in certain visas, like the accredited work visa, post-study work visa, and even visa fees are actually going to go up under the new government as they
Yeah.
control migration, and of course try to find a common consensus to balance the books, especially financially as well. So NZISA has got a challenge of respecting what the government wants, because most of the time we want to do something, we can be
Yeah.
very idealistic about it, but when it goes to the government level, they'll be like, no, you can't. And one of the challenge that we are also facing now is the International Students Wellbeing Strategy Fund. So you talk about COVID. Before COVID, we have the ISWS fund that came into effect by then President Lucas Christian, who set up NZISA. It gave about a few 100,000 to international student organizations across New Zealand. So NZISA was one of them. And we use that to have conferences, we use that to have road shows, and we also use that to run the organization on an operational level. However, when COVID came in, government diverted the resources, very rightfully so, I would say, to managing the COVID situation, like MIQs and COVID, and obviously state health services. So the ISWS fund was stopped. But what we have seen in recent years after COVID, that international students continue not to receive the ISWS funding. It has not restarted. And as soon as we try to restart it, there's a change in government, which is not a big fan of giving away money, and not a big fan of coming out with a lot of support packages because of the cuts that they are proposing. So NZISA is keen to work closely on that. We are in the process of working closely with partners to understand the government's point of view and see how the government can try to understand us as well. And I like it because it's, as I said, it's a national level organization. You're lobbying the government. So you are that voice for people down here to tell the government, please listen to us and give us a point of view. Another thing that I do as public relations officer is also helping international students who actually come directly to our organization when it comes to things like appealing a certain issue. So we've got students that come to us with years and years of challenges when it comes to pursuing a PhD, for example. During COVID, there was a lot of budget cuts among universities, and some students have had their PhD cancelled without valid explanations, without valid reasons. Now, we don't say that these students who have been here for 7 or 8 years can go back into a PhD program. We are not in the position to say that. But what we can do is we can raise their concerns to the minister, and I work closely with them on that. NZISA works closely with the Honorable Penny Simmons, who is the Minister for Tertiary Education. We raise the concern to her, and we say that, this is a person who's got a problem. It's been here for like a couple of years. Please find a solution. And that gives clarity to people. And we learn from it because we have the experience. So if any other international student has a concern about that, we will be honest with them. We will say, okay, we've actually handled something like that. This is what they said at that time. We will help you to lobby your concern to the government, but we do not promise anything, because our job is to lobby and to get guidance. It's not really about being there. And I remember Chris can say barking in every single bus or every single person that walks past. It's about understanding the situation as a whole. NZISA allows a macro understanding, and it empowers the people. It empowers me to continue empowering the people that we are actually working for. So that's why I really, really like pairing international advocacy on NZISA and OISA, because it allows that link over there.
That's such insightful thoughts there about, sometimes we forget that there has to be a rational outcome, and the rational outcome sometimes might not be what you want. We always go to someone and go, hey, I want an outcome, my solution. But there's, as you said, there's bigger forces at play. And I love your line where you said, sometimes we go with an ideology, but ideology is an ideology, which could be good or bad, whatever it is. But then there's a reality as well. This is ideology, and sometimes someone has to say, "Hey, this is a great idea, but the reality is not going to happen because X, Y, Z." And that's all you want. Tell us why, and then we might not agree with you, but at least we have an answer. Like you said, it's all about clarity, which is beautiful. I'm going to jump again, and I'm just going to, because you have so many strings. The next thing I want to talk about is at the start of the conversation. I didn't know about this about you, but it was great. You've now, I mean, advocacy seems to be a big part of your DNA, which is really beautiful. You've now gone to live in a college as a subwarden. what is that like, as someone who is living in a college and looking up the 17, 18, I guess some 19-year-olds, what has that like been for you? Yeah, yeah, it's because I've done that as well. I think it's a fantastic experience. How's the journey been for you?
Yeah, so I chose to take this responsibility because I was drawn to, again, my national service background when I was actually, I myself, as a newly enlisted recruit, had the opportunity of being trained by sergeants and lieutenants who were running the organization as rota commanders and section commanders running the entire platoon. They were a very disciplined approach. So obviously, corporal ways of managing the system, managing the recruits, a lot of discipline issues, and they did everything in the very extreme. But when I came to New Zealand last year, I had the opportunity of living in residential college, as I said, and my subwarden was completely different to what I thought a subwarden would be. So I thought it would be okay, some discipline had to be done because that was the stereotype that I had. And I realized things was very different. And I said, hang on, you don't have to be so defensive about things. Of course, you have to on a national service setting, but in real life, you don't have to. And I felt my subwarden was a very approachable person. You could just talk to him at any time about anything at all. And so I said, okay, this is actually very good. And I wanted to do it. And so I applied. I wanted to do it, and I realized that it was really good because you get to be involved in pastoral care and pastoral well-being. And I use pastoral care as the important thing because aside from my role that I do now in the residential college, NZISA is also perusing the pastoral code of conduct. And one of my colleagues, Neha Gamri, who's the education officer, is actually working to understand how the pastoral care works, how pastoral care works, in particular for international students, and simplifying the pastoral code of conduct. And that's something that I'm very synonymous with because when I go through my training as a subwarden, it is really, really important for you to understand the pastoral code of conduct in that 2 weeks, and you don't learn everything about the job in 2 weeks. You learn only 20% of it. 80% of it is about talking to people. So I do usually, we all have to do our door knocks, talk to every resident that you have under your charge, understand every resident and write a report so people know that you're talking to them. But most importantly, it's about the people. And I liked doing this job because I was drawn initially to it about the fact that it was about the people that you serve, about the people that you're helping out. Of course, there can be challenges that you face, um, but it just makes you grow as a person. You understand how people are. You have maybe 30 or 40 residents under your direct charge. They're all different people, and you understand the different types of people that you get to know. And so you understand people more in that regard. Speaking about people, I was reading this book, which is Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. It is actually a book that you actually understand about how people are. So you will talk to a person, and maybe this guy may have had a lot of problems with life and complaining about every single issue that happens. A very bitter person, but you get to understand how he is as a person, and you sort of tell that this guy might have a bit of a trouble issue about something, or it might be a personal issue that he's just being very personal about it. And that book, when I read about it, it's very theoretical, but you can put it into practice when you talk to people. And when I did this job, I remembered reading this book during my national service because my officers gave that book to us. And when I came here, I became a subwarden. I talked to residents, and then I understood these people might be, some of them might be apprehensive about university life. Some of them might be just very stressed about something. And so when you understand people better, you can provide help where it's necessary. It is important to also note that subwardens are not counselors. And that's one thing I always tell everybody because some of my friends are like, are you actually not emotionally drained about the fact that you listen to everybody complaining about everything in their life? I say, yes, but the thing is, we are trained very well. I'm very honored to be trained by my subwarden, my college leaders, Caroline and Dan. They train me very well in the sense that all of us are trained to understand that if there is any particular issues, we should not be afraid to ask the resident, do you need any help further than this? Because we can only provide you pastoral care. We are not counselors, and we need to be able to draw that line to make sure everybody is pushed. And sometimes they're not ready to go and see a counselor. They're not ready to see a psychologist. They're not ready to get help.
That's right. Yeah.
But if we feel that they are, we should push them and we should help them to do that. So this job has given me a lot of eye-opening. Finally, I do this job also because advocacy is all fun until you start seeing the computer for 12 hours a day. So it's very, very tiring because you do the paperwork, you do the meetings, you have all your meetings are online because all our execs are around the country. And recently, OISA has also transitioned to virtual meetings to make it more efficient for our work. It can be very emotionally draining or even stress for us to be sitting in a room the whole day doing the work. So being a subordinate, you get to do your rounds, you get to talk to people. I make it a point not to touch my phone at that time because it gets you a bit of a detox from the technology. You get to
Yep.
talk to people, do the rounds and all. So it's really very good. It is really a good balance, and it has been a sort of a good development towards my hawara, or rather my well-being, I would say.
No, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that there. I love that because the big thing that came up for me was, and I think this is a thread through your whole conversation today, is that people are important and um, people, the world is not of people, but all kinds of people, and being an advocate for them is something that's really passionate for you. And also, but also to think about yourself as a person, how our well-being, looking after yourself is also important. As the saying is always, you can't pour from an empty cup. So it's really beautiful to hear how you ended that segment there. Really beautiful. I mean, there's so much in it that is so just it resonates with me because I was a subwarden. I was involved with ethical pastoral code, and so it's really beautiful seeing that all these years going on, that it's still the same sort of passions that come through with people that come through, because sometimes you worry that, hey, this is we have this thing called the spotlight effect, which I'm sure you've heard about, where we think when you go, things are going to crumble, but the world doesn't work like that. The world still keeps on going. Irfan, we've been talking for just over an hour, which is really beautiful. The time has flown really fantastically. Um, what I would like to ask you um, is, our podcast is called Baskets of Knowledge. And every week we ask our guests to share a piece of knowledge to put into our kit, into our basket. You've shared so much information today, but is there any one or two pieces of knowledge that you'd like to share to put into our basket of knowledge?
I would say if there's one thing that I would share with your listeners is combine your passions with the opportunities that are provided in the place that you are in. And if there are no opportunities, use your passion to turn it into an opportunity, not just for yourself, but for others. I think that's really, really important because sometimes people might not think of it. And that's why there's no opportunity in that. But if you have the passion and you have the pace and the commitment to do it, people see that you're doing it. People see you really care about it. People will actually bother to find out more about it. So that's why I would say one basket of knowledge that I'll give is see the opportunities in the country. It's important to know what kind of opportunities people have. But at the same time, use your passions to combine that with the opportunity to create opportunities for people as well, not just for yourself. And if there's no opportunities, be the opportunity. I think that's one important thing that a lot of people find that is a challenge, but really New Zealand is a very multiracial, multi-diverse country. It's a very welcoming country. There's no way you cannot be the opportunity for like many, many other people.
I love that. Be the opportunity, that can take on so many different meanings in so many different contexts, whether it's in New Zealand or whether you're, I always think about recently with the Cricket World Cup, you think about Afghanistan and what they did. You would go, hey, 10 years ago, they were a fledgling team, nobody ever wrote them off, but they saw an opportunity, they took the opportunity, they took the passion, and now they're world beaters because, again, no, they didn't wait. They made these things happen. You have leaders like Rashid Khan and go, let's be the opportunity. So it's really beautiful that this be the opportunity can be taken to any context. That is something I'm going to put away and think about as well, because like you said, sometimes you have the passion but no opportunity, but take your passion and make the opportunity. Beautiful. What a great way to round off today's episode. Irfan, any last words before we round off? This has been really beautiful for me. This is my first time having a conversation with you, and I look forward to having more conversations because there's so much to share share with you, I think, and learn from you. Any last words from
Yeah,
you,
no, I
Irfaan?
mean, I'm very,
Yeah.
very grateful I'm actually very, very grateful for the opportunity that has been provided for me to come on the show to share more about the work that I do. And if there's any last words, basically it's just that basket of knowledge, be the passion, have the passion and be the opportunity. And there are no limits to what you can achieve in this country. So yeah, thank you very much for having me on the show.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you, Irfaan. Thank you so much for jumping on. For our listeners out there, for regular listeners, hopefully you've enjoyed it. For our new listeners, hopefully you've enjoyed what you've learned today and heard this fantastic story. If you haven't learned anything, please go back and have a listen because there's so many nuggets of gold. Whether it's for you or for your network, please go back and listen and don't forget to share this with other people. But the most important thing, as Tana myself like to say, as you go forward, don't forget to keep smiling. Don't forget to find a reason to smile. And the most important thing is don't forget to put something into your basket of knowledge every day. Until next time, ka kite. Bye, everybody, and peace. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge.
Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.